Okay, hi folks. So this is the assignment 2. We're working with the Natural Heritage Information Center database of all species in Ontario. I'm starting from step 2 in the analysis tasks after we've already done the data query, and that's because with this screen grab thing I can't actually record anything that's outside of the Excel screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with our pivot tables, and we put it into a new worksheet based on this table. And what we're going to do for our first sheet is put the rows for the NHIC class. We're going to rename this one to be our pivot, and we're going to bring down our EL code or the species code, whichever one it is. This is an old query. If you have the species ID code, just make sure that you're also that you're doing count and not the sum, because if you have the sum, you'll be getting the wrong values. So here what we have is a table that is basically going from our query, and it's compressing it and counting up the number of codes that we have. Now this again is a different identifier field than the one that we did in class, but essentially when you look at this amphibians, what it's doing is it's going from our query table and it's saying, well, let's pivot or let's filter for amphibians. And now you can see that we have, 31 amphibians out of our 18,798 species that are amphibians. And that is what this is telling us. If we want to see what the proportions are for that, the way that we can do that is to go and you have to right click and you go to show values as % of grand total. The other way that you can do that is by going here and you go to value field settings, and once that pops up you click show values as and you click the % of grand total. And so that's how you can get these proportions, and you can right click and go back. Again, this video is not going to be able to show those right clicks because I haven't quite figured out the screen recording, but it's right click, show values as % of grand total to see the % that's there. Now it's worth noting that I saw a couple people today and they would say filter out a group, and it's always going to tell you 100% when you're doing these because it is telling you the proportion of the ones that you have visible. So be aware of that when you are looking at the grand totals, that you can't have any of your rows filtered out if you want to get the percentage of the total that's there. So I'm going to convert this back to the count and the actual numbers there. And so we can rename this one as number of species. And we can say that this is our taxon. Next thing that we're going to do is, based on this, you can get the proportion of your species group that you choose out of the total by, again, showing the values as the % of grand total. What we're going to do next is we're going to hold the control button. We're going to grab this pivot and we're going to move it over to the side, which will make a copy of it. The other way that you can do that is just to go right click this and go to move or copy, and then copy it to the end of your sheet. So now we have another pivot, and it's still drawing from our query sheet, and so it's the exact same data, but we can actually change this pivot so that it's doing something else. And what we want to do is we want to drag our NHIC class up to filters. And what we're going to do there is we're going to pick one of these groups. And the group that I have in the example is vascular plants in the assignment, so we're going to work with that one. And you can see that it changed the number from that 18,000 all the way down to the number of plants that are in Ontario, which is 4,198. In order to get at the ranks, we'll start with Cosewick. And so we can drag Cosewick down to the rows, and you can see that now we have these names that are next to it. Now these names are in the assignment, so we can just start typing out what they actually are by clicking on the cells and then writing into them. And this will make it so that when we make our figures, it will auto-populate them into the actual figure. Now the blanks mean that Cosewick, which is the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada, which is the body that the federal government has to assess the conservation rankings of different species that might be at risk of extinction, Blank means that they haven't been assessed by COSOIC. And so out of the 4,198 species of plants in Ontario, 4,112 have not been assessed by COSOIC. So we just can call this unassessed. And for our figures, what we're going to do is filter those out. And so all we do is we click on this drop down at the top, and we just simply untick anything that we don't want to be in there. And so I just unticked unassessed by clicking this drop down at the top. What we can do is, if we go up to the Insert tab, we can make a simple bar graph for this one. And you see that this pops up. There are a bunch of things that we can add, and there are a bunch of things that we can get rid of. And so if you click on something like total, you can just delete it and get rid of it. Alternatively, you can untick the things here. So we don't want a legend and we don't want grid lines. You can see that we have the names of these, but they're kind of out of order. And so you can look at the order of things for the species group that you're working with in order to change the order of these so that it represents the actual gradient of conservation rankings so that it makes sense. And in this case, not at risk, special concern, threatened, endangered, extirpated. Oops, spelled that wrong. Extirpated. And so one of the other things that I want you to do is to right-click on any of these three things. So this pivot chart is attached to the pivot table, and so you can actually click on these filters, and if you change the groups that's there, it will change the pivot table and it will change the figure. And so we can go, that one is for birds, but we'll go back to plants now just to keep going here. So we can right click on those and we click on the hide all field buttons on chart. And you have to make sure that you right click on any of these blocks here. And we hide those, and now it's starting to look like a real figure. One other thing that we need to add are axis titles. So we add COSOIC status, and we add number of species. I also have that I want you to change the colors. And so when we're working with this figure, if you click on just the bars, you'll see that all of them are highlighted. But if you double click on just one, so you click on one, then it will just highlight that one. And you can use the little paint can filler to change the colors. And so not at risk, we have green. Special concern, we have yellow, and you can change these to whatever you want. I just have it as a certain kind of gradient of them in my head of what I think of them as. And we can change these colors to being representative of what it is that they're saying about the number of species in each of these categories. Extirpated. Last thing that you want to throw on these is a data label. Now, one thing to note is that if you have two columns, it will throw you off a little bit. So you can have two of the counts of codes in your table, but if you do that, it's going to have two bars, and you won't be able to get rid of them. So you have to make sure that when you're doing your charts, you just have one. For the assignment, I'll understand that if you have if you've worked out the table to look like this, that you understand how to actually get the proportions for the writing part of your report. So now we're going to copy this one again. Again, we hover on the sheet name, we hold Control, we grab it, and we bring it over to the side, and we can duplicate it like that. Now we're going to do our second chart, which is not the COSOIC status, so get out of there, COSOIC. And we do the SARO status. And so that's the Species at Risk in Ontario Act. And you can see that 4,100 out of the 4,200 species haven't been assessed by Species at Risk in Ontario. And so again, we're going to filter out those blanks. So we click on this drop down and we uncheck the blanks, which are unassessed species, and we say endangered, extirpated, special concern, and threatened. Then we change their order, and you can again change the order by hovering on the cells until this black grid pops up, and then you can drag them within the table, and that will change the order of them there. just going to move them so that it matches with the other table, because I'm a little particular. Then we can change the colors of this one again. And we want that one, that one, that one, and that one. And it's no longer COSWIC status, but it is Zero status. Boom, 2 figures down. We're going to copy the sheet again. Then we have our pivot 4 sheet. And so with this one, we're going to get rid of Zero status, get out of there, Zero status, and we're going to do S rank. And based on what we did in class, you'll have S rank 1 and S rank 2. And I'll let you think about why we're going to use S rank 1, because it gives us these values that we actually like. And so here we write S rank. And again, we can rearrange these. And so SH is historical. SN is SNA for the most part, which are the ones that are not applicable. We split this, and so it got rid of one of those letters. SU is unranked, and SX is extirpated, meaning that it's no longer found in Ontario. So we can put these ones that are historical, and extirpated are kind of these ones that are no longer present in Ontario. And then we can leave our not applicable and our unranked kind of on that side. And this represents, again, that gradient of rankings from really, really high endangered all the way up to pretty safe or unknown. So we can change our colors of each of these bars again. To represent their conservation rankings, and boom, that's the majority of the assignment. I guess there's one last pivot table that we want, so we can copy the sheet again. Again, hover over the sheet name, hold Control, grab with the mouse, and drag to the side. And the last one that we need to answer some of those questions are the provincially tracked. So get out of there, S rank. And now we have our provincially tracked ones. And so the N is not tracked, the P is partially tracked, and the Y is tracked. Okay, so now we're in our Word document, and I'm going to go through some of the things that we went through in tutorial to discuss how to create a report. And so the sections that you need in the report are a title page, a table of contents, a section for your analysis, paragraphs, a section for tables and figures, and then a references cited section. What you can do is you can highlight each of these, and if you go to styles and you select headings, which won't pop up for you, but all you have to do is within this style section, which might be something that's spread out across here, you change all of these to be headings. And when they're headings, Word recognizes them as being the top of a category. What's cool about it is you can add subheadings. So if I add figures and tables underneath of it, and I highlight those and I make them heading number 2, then you can add a table of contents that will auto-populate for these things. So I go up to the search bar, I search table of contents, and I go to either of the automatic tables, and it adds it in, and it keeps track of the page numbers that they're on. You can also, if you click anywhere in the table, you can see that there's a hyperlink that will take you to that part of the document, and you can update the table with where it is. The way that you can do a page break to put things on different pages in Word is with Control-Enter. So I go Control-Enter to put that on a different page, then put that on a different page, then Control-Enter to put that on a different page. You can hide the space between pages by double-clicking this white space, which doesn't seem to like working for me today, but it's easier if you go up to the top. So you go up to the top and you can do that. You can also do Control F, and hopefully that brings up the pane that you can actually see. And if you click on headings, then you can navigate to any part of your document that has one of these headers. And that's a really easy way that you can work around. I highly recommend that folks use Zotero or Mendeley, any sort of citation manager, because what you can do is you can click this wonderful Add Citation button, and it will add a citation in. I have to open Zotero first, so it doesn't yell at me. But once you have this kind of thing plugged in, you can add it from your library on your computer. You can choose which type of format you want for it, and then all you have to do is search up which one that you want. And so if I say I want Rogers et al. 2023, then all I have to do is press enter, and then it becomes really easy to cite in your document for things. So you can say, like, I learned a bunch of stuff about fish, Rogers et al. 2023. Then with the Zotero, it's really easy to add a bibliography at the end of your thing, which will auto-populate these things, and you can update the information in Zotero, and it will then update into here. So in terms of the analysis, I don't need you to have subheaders for your tables and figures, but what we're going to start doing is copying and pasting our figures out of the Excel document. And so you can just copy and paste it. If you go up to this Home tab, you can center it, and you can press enter to go underneath. And I want you to practice your figure captions. So figure 1 will be some description. And I have some examples of descriptions that are in the thing itself. Then we're going to pull over our Sero table, and that will be figure 2 with some description. And then we will bring over our figure 3, which is our S ranks, which will be figure 3 with some description. Now, if you get the bonus, there's a figure 4. That'll take some finagling on your part for actually figuring out how to do it. And so one thing that I realized I forgot to mention too much today is when I say that I want you to do an in-text citation for your figures, I want you to say, write what it is that you're trying to say. So for example, there are X many species of vascular plants in Ontario that have been assessed by COSWIC, and that would be figure 1. And so that might be X many, which is whatever Y %. And so that would be the kind of way that I'm hoping that you can incorporate this information. And as per the assignment instructions, there is one paragraph describing what we did and one paragraph that describes your results in terms of figuring out different things about your species group. Hopefully this is helpful. One last thing that I will, I guess, show you is when it comes to your title page, you can start to add in your headers and footers. And so with the headers, I like to do these blank 3 columns. When you're here, you can start to enter in quick parts, which might be different document properties, such as your author. You can click here, and when you just click on it, you can see that the whole thing is highlighted, meaning you're going to replace it. So I could put the date, which is that date. Or I could put a quick part of the document, which would be a field. And so I have a screen right now that pops up and it has a big list of field names, and I'm picking subject to be a field that goes in there. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to add the properties somewhere else. And so if I insert and I go to quick parts and I insert document property subject, what this is doing is it's telling Word what you want the subject to be. And so I'm writing, this is the short title for whatever paper it is that we're looking at. Now you'll see that nothing has changed up here, but what you have to do is you go up there and you press F9, and F9 updates all of these things. And so right now it's now drawing from this one. And so if I change it here, this is the short title boss, and then you'll see that it doesn't change. But if you go up here, you can press F9 again, and F9 updates it to match what that one is. And it's the same with the author. So if I wanted to put my middle initial there, I could put that there. I could put, now because I've changed that there, I can add a quick part for the document author. Now this becomes helpful. You can look at the template that I put into Brightspace when you're doing longer documents and say you want to have your title in multiple places. You can add a document property that is your title, and that would be the title of the report. And then you can reference that at other places within your report. So again, I want you to play around with this a little bit, try working through it. Practice your writing skills and practice your ability to describe some of these wonderful figures that you've put together. And I'm anxious to hear about the groups that you've chosen.